Oh, hey Dave, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for being here. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room here. That is the coronavirus. The mainstream media is going crazy. The stock market's going crazy. Everyone's talking about recession. I wanted to get your take on what you think is happening. Are we headed towards a recession depression? Aren't we headed towards a recession depression? Let me know what you think here.
Yeah, for a minute there, I thought you were gonna ask if Tom Brady was gonna go down to the Bucks. So hey, look, this was kind of a slow burn coming, and then I think what happened with the stock market slash the virus, I think when people started seeing how many people were dying in Italy and how their system got overwhelmed, I think it really freaked people out. And the market now is going to its level that it should have been for a long time. You and I have talked about this for a long time. I've told people that, look, the stock market is as good as it gets all of last year. Start moving into metals and miners because that's where the show's going to be. And then this last 2 weeks is the transition. Everything got dumped last week, but starting Friday, the metals and miners started to recover, and today they continue to recover. And as I know, you follow gold quite a bit. The vaults are emptying, so there's a disconnect between the paper price and the physical price, and that's going to lift the miners up. So what we're going to see here, first of all, that we're going from a stock market, Dave, to a market of stocks. So the whole passive investing, with them, the way they kind of lifted the market by just buying the biggest stocks and created this fake stock market gain is gone. That game's over. 2020, the year, a lot of things have changed. That's one that's going to change. So we're going to go from passive to active stock trading again. And that means the market's going to be a lot more choppy. And you're going to see people now move where the money's going to flow. And we're also going to see everything moving into the metals and miners. So that's number one, because you're seeing another phenomenon happening. So everything was monetary policy that was basically trying to shrink the cost of capital, which was lifting asset prices. Well, that blew up in a big way here in the last, 6 weeks. And so now the Fed went to zero. They technically can't get below zero. I mean, they could try the negative rate thing, but Europe has found that it doesn't really work. So now everything is shifting from monetary policy. They're going to play their role. They're going to buy every debt there's out there, Dave. Okay. I think the last thing they're going to do is probably let them buy stocks. That may come to it at some point, but they're going to pick up like they're doing today. Anybody that has a loan out there that won't roll over, the Fed's going to buy that loan and hold it. So you're going to see that side of the Fed, but they're at zero now. So the whole yield curve is going to just flatline between 0 and 1. And then now fiscal is going to take over. The nice thing about going to zero and why Trump has been banging on this for so long is that you can lift the deficit and the debt up, and it doesn't really affect your carrying cost. Does it matter to you if you have $1 million or a $2 million loan at 0% if you're paying interest only? Okay, all it means is you owe more. And for the United States and for government spending, all that really is dilution, i.e. inflation. So in the short term, I always tell people, I say, I wouldn't be surprised by the time this is all done to see the Fed holding, $20 trillion on their books, because it doesn't really matter per se until you want to start bringing that debt down. And they're not going to care until a baby boomer start to roll off in the next 8 to 10 years. So now fiscal is going to take over. And that means you're going to see dilution. That means the dollar is too strong. It's going to weaken. And that's going to lift all the commodities, precious metals first. So you're going to see gold miners go up, silver miners go up, platinum, palladium, rhodium companies. And then at some point, you'll see the commodities, the not the monetary commodities, but the economic commodities will follow at some point: copper, oil, steel, etc. And once oil gets through this transition and this war they're having between the Saudis and Russia, that'll play itself out. But oil will never be to where it was before, because with the advent of the electric car and people getting older, not driving as much, and we really have oil everywhere in the world, Dave, oil's not going to be the big thing it used to be in the past. So that's another thing that's changed. So finally, I think a lot of people are going to realize there's a lot of good things from this. Actually, we're going to see decentralization come back. We're going to see people moving from the cities into the more into the exurbs again, smaller towns. You're going to see a lot of companies saying, geez, I just really didn't need all these people here. I'm going to cut commercial real estate costs. we're seeing grocery stores in Southern California starting to do, hey, we'll deliver and you can pick up outside, and they're cutting their stores in half because they only need to have all that space for it to look nice for people to walk through. So this 2020 is a year everything changes. Now, could we go into depression? Sure, if they don't continue to put the fire hose on money. Like, right now, there's going to be 6 million people out of work in the next 2 to 3 weeks. They're just going to shove money at this thing until this virus thing ends in a month. So that's kind of my quick macro take on everything, Dave.
Why do you think this is going to end in a month? You think this is going to go longer than, I mean, you mentioned a month. I just wanted to get your take on why you think just a month. You don't think it's going to go into July, August, September?
The virus?
Yeah.
No, I do not. I've been reading study after study after study here on this virus, and this particular virus. It's a coronavirus. It's a subset of the coronavirus, but it still has the lipid shielding around it, like all the coronaviruses do, and it's subject to humidity and temperature constraints. And they're already seeing it in China. They've been measuring the infection rates, and they've been controlling it against temperature and humidity. And when temperature and humidity rise, the virus loses its, as it's quoted, its potency, its ability to infect. The other thing, too, is people get more sun, and the lungs have an ability then to shed the virus more effectively when it's more humid. So you're going to see this thing, by April 15th, you'll start seeing the infection rates roll over. And by May 15th, you'll see that as a very manageable kind of infection. And, my own personal view is the flu is still 10 times more disruptive for some older person's life than this will be at the very end. This is just because it was new, and I think because of the way in which the Chinese reacted to it, and then the way the Italians reacted to their hotspot. But I have data. I should have sent you over those charts that actually shows the R factor from that study. In terms of once you get into May, May to September, most of the country is just in great shape, and then Southern Hemisphere is going to have to worry about a little bit. And then by fall, they're already seeing that, I think it's called cocaline and quinine and these antivirals. They're all very effective against this virus. So I think you're just going to see this thing get tamped down. And they already started, vaccines are in. Plus, they're not going to be able to keep a country locked down for 2 months. At some point, it's just going to have to stop.
Yeah, I agree with you. So how have you been weathering this storm with your system getting through this? Because, in the past when we spoke, the market just kept going up and up and up. Now it's dropped, it's gone up, it's gone down. How have you been weathering the storm with your system?
Yeah, well, last week was not good for, I don't think, any system. I think it just plunged it. So we just rapidly just tried to stay away from the market because there was too many unknowns. But back Thursday and Friday again, and this Monday and Tuesday, the areas at which we saw coming back, we jumped on, the metals and the miners. So now that we get a little bit of sense of what's happening, that's where we're focusing on again. So 1 week, tough week, rest of the time and doing pretty well.
And I know that we were talking before, and you said you had some packages, some deals for the listeners because of what's going on and everything like that. Can you just explain what you have for everyone?
Yeah, so what we did together, like we always do, Dave, we put together, bundles for people if they're trading new or if they're trading experience for stocks, ETFs, for even cryptocurrencies, a lot of volatility there as well. And what we did in addition to that is we threw an extra $100 off the specials. We call it Trade Genius Stimulus Package, just to help people that are disrupted. A lot more people are going to be home. More people are going to probably try to trade or try to understand now that their stocks have gone down. How can they get more actively involved in what they're doing? And so we've done that. And in addition to that, what I'm going to do is anybody that really signs up for you this week is next week I'm going to do a special class to kind of show people how the system works and how they can take advantage of it, especially since I think the opportunity now with gold and silver and the miners are going to be tremendous, and how they can position themselves and be able to take advantage of it.
So you mentioned stimulus, and we know Trump and Steve Mnuchin, he was out there. They were talking about this gigantic, I think it's like $1 trillion stimulus package where they're looking to send people checks in the mail or maybe even a payroll tax deduction where they don't have to pay payroll taxes, and they haven't really decided on what they're going to do yet. Why do you think they're doing this stimulus package right now? I understand businesses are shut down, but if it's going to last a month or so, do we really need the stimulus package?
Well, I actually have personal insight on this because I own my own small business. My wife has her own small business, and my daughter, she works for a company, but she's really her own small business. Well, my wife's business is shut down because her clients can't really do what they do, so they don't need her. And my daughter, her job is gone for a month, and so bills still have to be paid, and people don't have the wherewithal generally to do that. So they're going to have to put some money in people's pockets. And like I said, we're at zero rate, so it doesn't matter if your interest rate's going to fall if you don't have access to cash. So that's why they're doing it. And plus, they don't want to tell people, hey, this is only going to be a month, because they're trying to scare everybody into their homes. So they're going to say, as long as we have this crisis, we're going to provide cash. And you got to realize, I mean, you pick any big city, these people have nothing. Most of the people, nothing at all. And, if they're going to get $1,000, that'll be gone in one day. It's just enough to barely feed somebody. And so that's why they're going to do that. And they're just going to shove money into the system because the Fed is unable to help those people.
Yeah, the Fed right now, I notice Trump continually says that the Fed is a follower, not a leader. And he keeps repeating that. And actually, throughout this, you can see that they haven't been stepping up and leading at all. Actually, he's been telling them what to do, and they've been, following everything that he's telling them to do. Now, throughout this whole thing, we noticed that since we had this virus, it affected the U.S. and many countries around the world. I think it's 120 countries now. Are the supply chains that we have that were coming out of China, is everyone starting to recognize that, something, having all our eggs in one basket is not a good idea? Do you think the supply chain system is now shifting?
Yeah, I do. I think, this is another area where Trump's going to be exonerated, that he had foresight into this, is that I think a lot of people were just happily unaware that stuff was coming from China. It showed up, it was cheap. And now, people are starting to realize, wait, my antibiotics, my medical supplies are over there. And I think a week or 10 days ago, the Chinese did a veiled threat saying you should appreciate what we're doing because you may not get your medical supplies if things don't get better. And I think that was an alarm klaxon that went through Congress. So I think you're going to see that's going to change. And I think you're going to see the supply chains coming home. I guarantee you, by every public board in the country sitting there talking about what's our supply chain mitigation plan if something like this happens again, because they're going to be asked that. And that also ties us back into the inflation camp too, Dave, is that when you bring these jobs home, you're going to get inflation because the labor is going to be more expensive and the workers are going to be in a little bit better position to demand things. And I don't mean that bad or good. I'm just speaking simply math. And that's going to be inflationary. And I think the government at this point says we have all this debt. We need inflation because we need velocity. And so we need to be able to pay this debt off with cheaper dollars. So I think you're going to see the supply chains come home. You're going to see wage inflation increase. And this whole thing reminds me of what happened between 1967 and 1980, where, we had kind of the Nifty 50, and then that whole thing blew up. And then you had the stock market not do anything for like 17 years. Then you had stagflation, and then you saw gold and silver and oil rise in price because wages were going up. I think that's where we're going to get into today. Baby boomers are retiring off. The labor that's out there is going to demand more money, and I think that's what you're going to see. And people are going to demand that these supply chains, especially critical industries, are going to be home.
I mean, to me, it feels like, and I say this in my reports, it feels like we're going through this great economic transition right now. And I mean, it's like a gigantic ship and it's turning, and ships don't, turn on a dime. I mean, it takes a little while. And if we hit something, that whatever we hit is going to be in trouble. But it feels like everything is starting to turn. Do you think this is an economic transition taking place right now?
Absolutely. I think it's an entire societal change. I think nothing's the same after this. I'm just shocked it happened all in a week.
Yeah.
Typically when these things happen, you could see it and react to it. Hey, we got a sell signal. Okay, let's keep lightening up. That's not what happened. I mean, literally from Sunday night to Wednesday, the market just dropped 10, 12%. and just nobody can get out of its way. And all of a sudden we have this, all these activities in Congress happening, and you got these emergency declarations going on. You got a change in the Fed. I think they condensed everything down into a week, and I think we're going to be reverbing this thing out over the next couple of years. But I think it's more than economic, Dave. I think it's total society change. I think people are going to make decisions. I just talked to a guy called me today. He said, I just moved out of my my one house. I'm moving out to my home in the country, and I won't be back for 3 months. And he said, I may not come back, so I think you're going to see maybe this migration back out of these urban centers. Everything the elites told us was great is going to get unwound, I think. Globalism's gone. Centralization in the cities is gone. Climate change is gone. This whole mantra of globalism is gone. And so I think we just got a ice bath in terms of how we're going to live going forward.
So you're saying with a snap of a finger, everything was just reversed very, very quickly, and we're going to see everything completely change. Now, do you think, and I know they keep asking Trump, do you think we're going into a recession? He said, oh, maybe, but he goes, there's a lot of pent-up demand, and I believe once the virus passes, we're going to see this pent-up demand all of a sudden make the market go up, make the economy look better, everything's going to be great. Do you think that is going to happen?
I do not, because our economy is mostly services, and services don't have pent-up demand. If I'm going to the massage parlor once a week or a tanning booth once a week and I miss 2 weeks, I don't go twice the next week. So you're not going to see that. And so what's going to happen is we almost just had like a record skip, and that money and that velocity is lost forever. Now, where it's going to pick up is with the supply chains coming home. I think you're going to see a lot of that investment come, but it's going to be a bit of a hiccup. So I think we almost like lose a quarter of GDP before we get the ship righted again. So I'm not as optimistic as he is regarding that. And for sure, we're in a recession. I mean, you can't idle 3 or 4 industries across the country entirely with no pay and not see the entire economy go negative. So this quarter coming is going to be negative. The next quarter after that might be negative. But I don't think we're going to go into the depression just because they're going to throw so much money at it, Dave.
And also, if you really think about it, and you mentioned that, the virus will disappear maybe in April, May. In June, doesn't the USMCA actually come online, which then gives us the ability to add manufacturing, add the auto parts coming to the U.S.? It feels like the way this is set up and the way everything is happening, certain things are going to kick in at certain times, and maybe that will boost the economy moving forward. Now, do I say the stock market's going to go up to 30,000 points? No, but I think we're going to see, personally, I think we're going to see a gradual increase as we move throughout this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in fact, Canada quickly approved a USMCA before they went on their break last week. So they're hurrying to do that. Yeah, I think everything's going to collapse. I think we talked about this before. I call it the Five Eyes plus Mexico. That's going to be the trading bloc with the U.S. You're going to have England, Canada, United States, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand. And I think they're going to throw India in there because, that we have some natural affinity and ties culturally and where our systems work. So I think that's going to be the bloc. And probably could throw Israel in there too. But it's not just the USMCA, Dave. With this declaration of national emergency, the Department of Defense has broad authority to rewrite industrial policy. So they literally could say and call up, whoever the vaccine makers are in this country and say, you got 6 months to bring your vaccination activities back onto these shores or back into our trading bloc. And so they can do that tomorrow. They literally can do that. And there's nothing companies can't do anything. It's already available to them. So they can rewrite industrial policy as we go. And I guarantee you President Trump's going to take advantage of that before this emergency is lifted. He's going to change industrial policy in this country.
So do you think he's going to force companies back here to the United States?
I do. It may not be very overt. He may just say, hey, congratulations. Abbott Labs has decided to move their their ventilator, production from China to the United States. I'm really proud of them, but the phone call behind the scenes was, you're going to move your ventilator plant from China to the United States, so he'll allow them to be good guys, just like kind of like what he did last Friday when he had CEO after CEO after CEO get up there and talk about how they're helping. He's going to want the American people to see that this is what they want to do too. But I guarantee you they're being strong-armed behind the scenes. And I guarantee alarm bells went off when the Chinese did that threat to us about antibiotics, because there's a lot of people here aren't quite sure this virus is natural. And if they say, hey, if they can release this thing on us, who's to say they may not release a bug, a super bug on us, and we have no ability to combat it, because all our manufacturing is in the hands of a country we don't quite trust. And so I think you're going to definitely see that change for sure, and defense industry material as well.
It's funny, you mentioned China and it was a wake-up call. And going back in time, the mainstream media and everyone was looking at Russia. It was always Russia, 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 never really looking at China. And it feels like what has happened with all of this is that everyone's eyes have been turned towards China now. After China made that threat, what has been happening? And now everyone is looking at China, looking at the supply chains, looking at why we shouldn't have manufacturing there. And it seems to me like a huge, huge change is coming. It feels like we are reversing what happened when we went on to the petrodollar, where over time they moved all the companies out, they moved manufacturing out. It feels like Trump is reversing all of this now.
Yeah, you're exactly right. When you import a lot of things, you have to have a lot of dollars out there. And Trump's always been a strong dollar guy, and he's also a strong industrial policy guy. You're absolutely right. When we went totally independent on oil in this country, the petrodollar was not as much interest to us anymore. And also, you need a ubiquitous dollar if you want to fight endless wars too. So if you don't need either one of those two things, doesn't really matter. You want to have a strong currency at this point because you want investments to come into your country. So yeah, I totally agree with you, Dave. I think you said it well.
Bob, listen, thank you very much for being on the X22 Report Spotlight. Once again, how can people find your site, sign up?
Yeah, so go to tradelikeagenius.com. And then check out the bundles that we have, stocks or cryptocurrencies, a beginner or advanced. We have trading rooms, we have chat rooms. We provide trade signals as well, for some of the things that we're doing. And then we provide education, like the thing I just referred to before. And I shot you over a couple charts, if you could throw those out there, just to show people the opportunity that's in front of us with gold and where it's traded against the broad market in the past. And we have tremendous opportunities in front of us, and hopefully people will join us and make some money here during this trying time.